Welcome to the class. Some of you might have to get a paper bag tonight or stop your ears. But we're going to go through it and we're going to learn why such language is used. And we are in Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 8. Now who can tell me what happened in the first 7 verses? Remember, a family puts a little child, just throws her out in the field. No attention at all. And the man comes by and sees her desperate condition. He doesn't even have her navel cord cut. She hasn't been washed. She's thrashing about in her blood, probably screaming and crying at the top of her lungs. Hadn't even been wrapped in cloth or rubbed with salt. In other words, nothing had been done for the young girl except to throw her out. And then a man comes by and sees her condition, and he says to her one word. What is it? Live. And it's emphatic. Live. And she did. In fact, down in verse 7, we see that she grew and she reached puberty, shall we say. And then verse 8, I'm going to guess 16, 18 years later. Then I passed by you and saw, behold, you were at the time for love. She was at marriageable age, sexually mature. So I spread my skirt over you. In other words, he claimed her as his. He married her, and we had an example we showed back in Ruth of spreading the corner of one's garment for a man over a woman, and that removed her shame because she was naked, spiritually or figuratively speaking. And this probably roughly concurs or goes along with their growth period in Egypt, and when God sent Moses, and she was still disgraced because of her low position and the way that she was persecuted by the Egyptians. And he says, I covered, let's see, what verse? Yes, so, I think, hold on just a minute, let me get my verse straight here. Okay, I covered, where is that? I covered your nakedness. 8, thanks, Joni. In other words, he removed her shame and claimed her as his own. We talked about that. Hello, John. Now, verses, let's see. He entered into a covenant with her, probably a reference to the law of Moses, the Sinai covenant at Sinai, obviously. And Jeremiah has something to say about that. He says, go and proclaim in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, thus says the Lord, remember concerning you the devotion of your youth, your love of the love of your betrothals, in other words, to me. You're following after me in the wilderness through a land not sown. And this has reference to her growing and becoming a numerous people. Now that takes us to verse 9, and 9 through 14 describes all of the purifications and all of the preparations that this man who passed by this young child and later a young woman concerning the preparations for marriage, and not just anybody, but marriage of someone of a great high rank. And this takes us back to the example of Esther. It says, now when the turn of each lady came to go before the king, Ahasuerus, At the end of her 12 months, under the regulation for women, that's how long the preparation took for her to be presented to the king. For the days of their beautification were completed as follows: 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and cosmetics for women. So it was a tradition that women went through in her days, a rather long preparation time. And in the case of Boaz and Ruth, Naomi, who was her mother-in-law, tells her, before you go to Boaz, wash yourself therefore and anoint yourself and put on your best clothes and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make known yourself to the man, that's Boaz, until he has finished eating and drinking. So make all of the preparations necessary for your encounter with your Redeemer and husband, Boaz. Let's go back to Ezekiel in verse 12. I also put a ring in your nostril, earrings in your ears, and a beautiful crown on your head. Thus you are adorned with gold and silver, and your dress was of fine linen, silk, and embroidered cloth. You ate fine flour, honey, and oil, so that you were exceedingly beautiful, and you even advanced to royalty. Then your fame went forth among the nations on account of your beauty, for it was perfect. Why? Because of my splendor, which I bestowed upon you. So everything that she is going to become is going to be because of the love and the grace of the one who found her and who has married her and has pledged to take care of her. And so verse 13 sums up what verses 9 through 12 had already told us. And this part of the description probably takes us to the height of the status of God's people back then, which would be when? Saul David, and then probably more likely the reign of Solomon after David, because Israel became rich. I mean rich. And I think I've got that verse. Yes, you're right. So this was before the kingdom divided. Remember, it divided under Solomon's son Rehoboam. So this was the height of the nation of Israel, and probably described figuratively in these verses up on the wall here. She advanced to royalty. She became a queenly city, admired, and even jealous, inspired jealousy in the nations around her. And who heard of the fame of Solomon and the riches of the kingdom and came to visit? Sheba, the Queen of Sheba. So that's how much God's blessings had done for what was once an abandoned young female baby, and then a still naked woman who had reached puberty, until this man who comes by and says, I'm going to take you as my own, and I'm going to provide everything that you need, even beyond the necessities. Luxuriously is the way that God took care of her. But here's the problem. Deuteronomy 6, 10 through 12. Then it came about, this is Moses speaking, when the Lord your God brings you into the land which he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you great and splendid cities, which you did not build, and houses full of good things, which you did not fill, and hewn cisterns, which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees, which you did not plant, and you eat and are satisfied, and watch yourself that you do not forget the Lord who brought you from the land of Egypt out of the house of slavery. And that is a prophetic word, because that is exactly what happened to God's people. Now, verse 14. Yeah, John, you mentioned how rich they were. 1 Kings. Solomon made silver as common as stones in Jerusalem, and he made cedars as plentiful as sycamore trees, which were not worth much, but were everywhere, that are in the lowland. It was apparently just laying out in the streets, and nobody thought it was worth picking up, because the prosperity under Solomon was so great that it was not needed. It was simply not needed.
What was that verse in Deuteronomy?
Hold on just a minute. Let me- 6, 10 through 12. I don't know why, but it was a skip verse 14, so I'll read it. Then your fame went forth among the nations on account of your beauty, for it was perfect because of my splendor, which I bestowed upon you. So all of her beauty came from God. Everything that she had was because God had blessed her, given it to her. He doted upon her, is a good way to put it, and blessed her beyond almost any other way that you can imagine. And this verse in where am I going? I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there either. Oh, okay. Verse 15, but here's where the problem began. But you trusted in your beauty and played the harlot in idolatry because of your fame, and you poured out your harlotries on every passer-by who might be willing. You took some of your clothes and made for yourself high places of various colors and played the harlot on them, which should never come nor about nor happen. You also took your beautiful jewels made of my gold and of my silver, which I had given you, and made for yourself a male image that you might play the harlot with them. So this verses 15 all the way through verse 34 tell us about the contrast between God's kindness and blessing and Israel's misuse, abuse of what God had given her. And it's about the worst abuse of a blessing that can be done. In fact, I guess it is. Now, verses 15 through 22 tell us about her religious idolatry. And then 23, running through verse 34, describe her political shenanigans, lying, and betrayals. Okay, so the prophet is now going to describe the idolatries of the time of the kings, beginning with who? Who introduced idolatry into God's people, into the land? No. First, Solomon. Because he married an Egyptian princess, yes, and made for her an idol's temple with their idol gods in it. And that was the first time that idols had been introduced into the land. And it got worse. But this refers to, from there on down, the time of the kings in which both the north, the 10 tribes, and the south, the two southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin, permitted idolatry to creep into their way of life. So Israel seemed to forget about all of the gifts of love and unselfish service which her husband had shown to her when she was just a babe struggling out there in the field, ready to die. So now, Jerusalem's trust leaves God and goes to idols and political expediency, shall we say, or treaties, alliances, if you will. He says, you trusted in your beauty, your riches, your strength, and your alliances. And Hosea has something to say about that. As that their pasture, okay, everything they needed, they became satisfied, and being satisfied, their heart became proud. And the next step was they forgot me. And it happens like this over and over and over throughout human history. God blesses us, we forget where those blessings come from, and we forget God. Oops, come back here. I don't want to look at that yet. Says that she played the harlot, misusing the glory that God had given her because of your fame, by allowing your fame to lead you into idolatry and alliances with the foreign nations. He says that you poured out, let me back up here, that you poured out your harlotries, which expresses how many, or the multitude, there really were. Not just one. It was a measure which, in this verse, tells us that it just ran over. So the Jews who were not content with the idols they already had embraced all that offered or their neighbors could furnish them with. I'm not happy with the ones I have. I need more idols to satisfy me. She said that it says that she poured out her harlotries on every passer-by. And that's a figure taken from a habit in the Old Testament of harlots sitting beside the main roads looking for customers. And if you remember the incident of Judah and his daughter-in-law, Tamar, who was supposed to marry one of Judah's sons, and Judah had promised that when this young man grew up to be old enough, he promised to give him to Tamar. Well, he didn't. So Tamar decided that she was going to get even with Judah and set up a harlotry site beside the road and induced her own father-in-law to come in and trap him, and he got in trouble, big trouble. But it was common. Let's see. Yeah, she removed her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself, and sat in the gateway of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah, that was Judah's son, the one who he had promised to Tamar, had grown up, and she had not been given to him as wife. And when Judah saw her, he thought that she was a harlot, because that's where they set up their stands. For she had covered her face, and it was too late for Judah by the time he discovered the deception that had taken place.
Which doesn't mention anything about the fact that he was going for a harlot.
No, it doesn't. But that wasn't the point I wanted to make, John.
Right.
Okay. Jeremiah 3:2. Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see, where have you, Jerusalem, not been violated? By the roads you have set for them like an Arab in the desert, and you have polluted the land with your harlotry and with your wickedness. Let's go back to verse 16. Yeah. You took some of your clothes, made for yourself high places of various colors, and played the harlot on them, which should never come about nor happen. Remember some of those clothes that we talked about earlier in the chapter? What kind of clothes were they? Rich, embroidered, and silk.
Mine says to make color high places.
Yes, they were made colorful and attractive for obvious reasons, to draw attention to the services being offered there. And some thinks it probably was a tent, which was gaily decorated, and a carpet, which was beautifully laid out for obvious reasons. Let's see, I think I've got Isaiah has something to say here. Yeah. Upon a high and lofty mountain you have made your bed. You also went up there to offer sacrifice. And this is these famous high places that came about early during the time of Samuel, I believe. And he says in Proverbs, this is a harlot doing the speaking, have spread my couch with coverings, with colored linens of Egypt. I have sprinkled my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon, all to make her offering attractive to any passer-by who wish to partake of her services. Let's see. Okay. Verse 17. Yeah, verse 17. You also took my beautiful jewels, which was, by the way, you took my jewels and made them into gold, melted them down, and my silver, which I have given you and made for yourself, male images. Why male? Because in the parable, she is pictured as a female. Now, normally, idols are not characterized by sex, but this one is because this was a woman in the parable who could not be satisfied. Let's see, 16, 18. Then, you weren't through, you took your embroidered cloth and covered them and offered my oil and my incense before them being the male idols. Also my bread which I gave you, fine flour, oil and honey with which I fed you, you would offer before them the male images for a soothing aroma, and so it happened. Now this soothing aroma is the opposite of an abomination. Now what made the soothing odor? Frankincense. Declares the Lord. Now in verse 20, moreover, you took your sons and daughters, in addition to what you've already done, you took your sons and daughters, whom you had borne to me, and sacrificed them to idols to be devoured. And I'll paraphrase the last one. I guess your harlotries were not enough. You weren't satisfied with all of that. You had to have your own children pass through a fire and be burned alive, particularly to a god named Molech, okay, because he supposedly demanded that for satisfaction, and they offered their own children.
Sacrificing children.
Yes, he did.
Some of the kings of Israel actually did that.
Yes, Ahaz and Manasseh, I believe, followed the example. I think we'll get there, yeah. My oil would be the holy anointing oil, which was used in the ritual service to God in the tabernacle and in the sacrifices. I think I've got something about 1 Kings. Yeah, but he walked in the ways of the king of Israel and even made his son pass through the fire according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had driven out from before the sons of Israel. Ahaz would have been, I don't know, maybe 150 years before Ezekiel wrote these words. It had already been done. Verse 21, you slaughtered my children and offered them up to idols by causing them to pass through the fire. Besides all of your abominations and harlotries, you did not remember, and there's what Deuteronomy 6, 10 through 12 said, you did not remember the days of your youth when you were naked and bare and squirming in your own blood. They had forgotten God completely. So all that was was good in Israel came from God, given freely, and now going to be taken away. Israel's own, the thing that she had for her own that was not given to her by God was her sin and weakness. That's all she had of her own. The rest of it came from God, all the good things. Verse 23. Whoops. Then it came about after all of your wickedness. And then he says, woe, woe to you, declares the Lord God, that you built yourself a shrine or a high place. Sometimes these two are swapped in the versions. A high place on every square. You built yourself a high place at the top of every street and made your beauty abominable. Put your fingers in your ears. You spread your legs to every passerby to multiply your harlotry. You also played the harlot with the Egyptians, your lustful neighbors, and multiplied your harlotry to make me angry. I hope you're beginning to see why God did what he did to the Jews at the destruction of Jerusalem in 586. A shrine in verse 24 was literally an arched vault, which was used as a brothel. The natural high places that were out in the open countryside were apparently too far for the people to go who just had to have their idols. So they now want to put high places on every main street corner in the city so they won't have to go so far, so they can satisfy their lust. So they were not content to commit harlotry in private out there under the spreading trees in these high places. Now they were okay to do that in public on every street corner. So that is the sad situation that we find ourselves in with this woman. Verse 26, their history is now marked by unholy, that is military and commercial alliances with the nations around them, foreign nations. And I think I'm safe in calling this woman a nymphomaniac. And that's the picture that's being presented.
This is very much the picture that we also saw in Revelation.
Yes, it is.
Rome.
Yes, and I think it's chapter 18. Yeah. It represents her never-ending attempt to gain security through military alliances, political alliances, and commercial or business alliances instead of trusting God to take care of them. Had they trusted God, things would have gone just fine. They would have never had this problem at all. So these alliances constituted a rejection of God and his ways, and they also resulted in the adoption of idolatry of every new alliance partner they got. If they had an alliance with Egypt, in came Egyptian idolatry. Solomon's marrying the Egyptian princess was largely a political move. And then guess what we have? Soon after that is her idol's house in Jerusalem itself. So with every country they made an alliance with, in came their idols. Syrians, Assyrians, Babylon's idols came in and became part of the array of idolatry in Jerusalem because this woman couldn't be satisfied with her own. She had to have more and more and more. Egyptian god Tammuz that the 20 of the women were weeping over inside the temple. Chapter 8, verse 14. That's too small, but Solomon formed a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her to the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall about Jerusalem. And that was the mistake that led to disaster. Isaiah wrote, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses." Now, who did that? Solomon. And they trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong, but they do not look to the Holy One of Israel, nor seek the Lord. Misplaced trust.
Just like Gideon, God limited it down to
300. Yeah. Isaiah 36:6, "Behold, you rely on the staff of this crushed reed, even on Egypt, on which if a man leans," if you trust in Egypt, "it will go into your hand and pierce it, so is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all of those who rely upon him." And they did rely on Egypt to bail them out of the confrontation with Babylon. And Egypt promised that we'll come up there and take care of it, but what happened? They didn't. Yep. He said, "You also played the harlot with the Egyptians, your lustful neighbors." And I hate to say this, but that's not an accurate translation. It has to do with male virile parts. Holman Christian Standard has well-endowed Egyptians. Do I need to say any more? That was the picture of this woman's insatiable lust. Embarrassing, though, and it was embarrassing, and it was shame and degrading, because these are God's people that this woman represents. God's people. This is how low and degenerate they had become. Let's go to verse 27. "Behold, now this is where God steps in and says, okay, this is the situation. This is what I'm going to do. Behold, now I have stretched out my hand against you and diminished your rations." Some translations have, "I reduced your territory. And I delivered you up to the desire of those who hate you, the daughters of the Philistines, who always hated Israel, who are ashamed of your lewd conduct." Now, what does it say when your next door neighbors, the Philistines, are ashamed of your conduct? That's bad. That's really bad. Moreover, verse 28, "You played the harlot with the Assyrians, because you were not satisfied. You played the harlot with them, and still you were not satisfied. You also multiplied your harlotry with the land of merchants," Chaldea, which is another name for who? Babylon. "Yet even with this you were not satisfied." I don't know of a more scathing denunciation of the people of God than Ezekiel chapter 16, and we'll bump into it again in chapter 23, and I've run 3 minutes over. We will discuss these verses a little bit more next week. Any questions that don't happen to do with a certain subject?
Well, I could read any other questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for your message, and help us to learn from the mistakes and the sins of those who precede us, because we realize that human nature does not change, and that we too can be guilty of forgetting all of the good things that you have done for us, and that we can turn to trust other people or other things. Bless us through Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
So much? So much. You know what Jesus, you know what God said? Psalm 16, like Billy said, God so loved the world. So much. He loved him. God loved him so much. That's so. A lot. I like people